The first rule of undercover work was simple: never be interesting. Jace Merrick broke that rule only by accident, and only because the universe had an ironic sense of humor. The diplomatic gala unfolded inside a vast floating palace, suspended above the Capitol like a jewel that had decided gravity was optional. Transparent floors revealed slow-moving air traffic far below, ships gliding like lazy fish through artificial clouds. The ceiling projected a rotating map of nearby star systems, their names whispered softly in several languages as guests passed beneath them. Jace passed beneath them too, wearing a perfectly tailored suit woven with nanofibers that adjusted temperature and posture, and a face that belonged to a man named Calder Voss, junior trade liaison, insignificant enough to be ignored by everyone who mattered. That was the plan. He held a crystal flute filled with something that tasted like sweet metal and regret, nodded politely at ambassadors who nodded back without curiosity, and cataloged exits the way some people counted ceiling lights. Two guards near the east archway, one security drone disguised as a floating art installation, emergency grav lift behind a velvet curtain. Everything normal, comfortingly dull, which in Jace's experience was always when things went wrong. He sensed her before he saw her. Conversations nearby softened, posture shifted, and the ambient hum of the palace adjusted pitch in a way that suggested respect coded directly into the building itself. Queen Selene moved through the crowd without hurry, pale skin almost luminous against the darker silks of her court, black hair falling straight down her back like spilled ink. Her long ears curved elegantly through her hair, unmistakable and unhidden, a reminder that while she looked disarmingly human, she was not. Jace focused very intently on his drink. She stopped beside him anyway. He considered pretending to choke, then dismissed the idea as undignified and likely fatal. Instead, he turned just enough to acknowledge her presence, offering the mild smile of a man whose greatest ambition was balanced import tariffs. She leaned closer, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of her breath and the subtle hum of implanted translators beneath her skin. "I know who you are, human," she said softly into his ear. Jace did not spill his drink. He considered this a professional achievement. His pulse spiked, his mind sprinting through contingency plans that ended with remarkable consistency in either imprisonment or a very public execution involving formal speeches. Yet none of that happened. No alarm sounded, no guards moved. Queen Selene straightened, smiling as if she had just complimented the music. Jace cleared his throat. "I'm flattered," he said quietly, "but I get that a lot. Trade representatives have that effect." Her smile widened by a fraction. Dangerous fractions were her specialty. "Dance with me," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The request rippled through the room. Declining a queen was not illegal, but it was often followed by regret. Jace placed his glass on a passing tray and offered his arm, telling himself that if this was the end, at least it involved good lighting. The music shifted as they stepped onto the floor, the palace responding instantly, rhythm aligning to her pace. Selene moved with effortless precision, guiding him as if she had always known exactly how tall he was, how long his stride would be. "You're calm," she said as they turned. "Most infiltrators sweat." "I moisturize," Jace replied. "It's a human thing." A soft laugh escaped her, surprising him. "Your cover was impressive. Too impressive. You watched everything but wanted nothing. That is very suspicious." "Some of us are born bored," he said. "It's a condition." They spun, her eyes never leaving his. Up close, he noticed the faint geometric markings along her temples, neural interfaces woven into bone, glowing almost imperceptibly. "My intelligence network identified you 3 hours ago," she continued. "You arrived with forged credentials, altered biometrics, and a posture that suggests military training, pretending very hard to be civilian." Jace sighed. "I knew I should have slouched more." "And yet," Selene said, "I did not expose you." "May I ask why?" he said carefully. "Because," she replied, guiding him through another turn as the court watched, "anyone who risks this much to stand in my ballroom is either very foolish or very desperate." Her long ears tilted slightly back, a gesture he suspected carried meaning he did not yet understand. "So," she added lightly. Tell me, human, which one are you? Jace met her gaze, the galaxy turning slowly above them, and realized that the most dangerous part of his mission had only just begun. The dance ended to polite applause that sounded a little too measured to be genuine. Jace released Queen Celine's hand with the careful respect expected of someone who valued his continued existence. The palace adjusted again, lights dimming slightly as the music softened into background elegance. Around them, diplomats leaned closer to one another, pretending not to stare while doing an excellent job of staring. Celine did not step away. Walk with me, she said, already turning. Jace followed, because the alternative involved explaining himself to palace guards who carried weapons that hummed like impatient insects. They moved along the outer edge of the hall, passing columns grown rather than built, their surfaces slowly shifting as if the stone itself were breathing. He noticed the way her presence subtly altered the environment. Doors opening before she reached them, floors smoothing under her steps. Power here was not symbolic, it was architectural. You handled that well, she said as they entered a quieter corridor. Most spies attempt denial. I considered fainting, Jace replied, but I worried it might be seen as melodramatic. Her lips curved again. You humans have strange priorities. The corridor narrowed, then widened into a gallery where holographic displays hovered in midair, depicting historical scenes of treaties signed, wars avoided, wars disastrously not avoided. Celine slowed her pace, hands folded loosely behind her back. You are not here for trade, she said, and not for assassination. Your body language is wrong for that. I appreciate the vote of confidence, Jace said. I've been working on my non-murderous posture. She stopped and turned to face him. Up close, her eyes were sharper than they had seemed on the dance floor, dark and reflective, like polished obsidian. Her long ears angled slightly forward now, attentive. You are looking for something, she said. Information, dangerous information. Jace exhaled slowly. He had rehearsed a dozen lies for this moment. None of them felt adequate. I'm looking for a pattern, he said instead. Ship routes that don't make sense. Deals that vanish from records. People who disappear quietly. Celine studied him, expression unreadable. Somewhere in the palace, something clicked, like a system recalibrating. You believe this pattern threatens your government, she said. I believe it threatens several, Jace replied, including yours. That earned him a soft, thoughtful sound that might have been a laugh. Bold, she said, and either very clever or very desperate. You mentioned that earlier, he said. I'm starting to feel typecast. They resumed walking, deeper now, away from the noise of the gala. Jace noticed the absence of guards, which was somehow more unsettling than their presence. You know, Celine said casually, if I wanted you detained, it would already be done. The palace would simply decide you no longer belong here. That's comforting, Jace said, in a deeply alarming way. She glanced at him sideways. Why come personally? Why not send drones, algorithms, proxies? Jace shrugged. Because algorithms don't notice when people lie well, and proxies don't improvise. And you improvise, she asked. I survive, he corrected. They stopped before a wide window that looked out over the city below, lights tracing impossible geometries through the air. Celine rested one hand against the glass, the faint glow of embedded technology traced along her fingers. My court believes humans are predictable, she said, aggressive, linear, noisy. I like to think we're more chaotic, Jace said. It's a cultural strength. She laughed then, a brief sound but genuine. Perhaps. Still, your presence here will not go unnoticed for long. There are those who would gladly see you exposed. I get that a lot, Jace said, usually right before things explode. Celine turned to him fully now. Tell me everything, she said quietly. Not a version, not a performance, the truth. In return, I will give you access to my intelligence archives. What you seek is there. Jace stared at her, the city humming beneath them, the palace alive around them. Trusting an alien queen went against every instinct he had ever been trained to have. And if I refuse, he asked, her ears tilted back slightly. Then I will enjoy the rest of the evening, she said, and you will spend yours explaining yourself to people with far less patience than I have. He snorted despite himself. You really know how to make an offer. Celine smiled, unoffended. I am a queen, she said. We specialize in impossible choices. Jace looked out at the sprawling city, then back at her. All right, he said. But if this is a trap, you will say you suspected it all along, she finished. Yes, humans always do. And somewhere deep within the palace, unseen systems shifted again, as if the building itself were listening closely to what he would say next. Celine led him through passages that no longer pretended to be ceremonial. The walls here were smooth and dark, threaded with faint lines of light that shifted color as they passed, responding to her presence like attentive servants. Jace felt the subtle pressure change in his ears, the telltale sign of localized gravity modulation. The palace was rearranging itself, closing distances, opening others, deciding where they were allowed to go. He decided not to comment on that. Making jokes about sentient architecture felt like tempting fate. They entered a chamber that appeared almost empty at first glance. The ceiling curved high overhead, studded with points of light that were not stars but data nodes, each one pulsing slowly. The floor was glass clear, revealing layers beneath. Memory strata. Celine had called them once in a briefing file Jace had skimmed years ago. The palace remembered everything. Speak, Celine said, stopping at the center of the room. Jace took a breath. All of it. She nodded. Her long ears angled forward, attentive in a way that made lying feel physically uncomfortable. Fine, he said. But if at any point you dramatically signal hidden guards, I reserve the right to be offended. No guards, she said. Just listeners. That's worse, he muttered, then began. He told her about the first anomaly. Cargo ships logged as carrying agricultural equipment, but emitting radiation signatures consistent with compact weapons cores. About shipping manifests rewritten mid-transit. Ports that officially did not exist, but appeared briefly in navigation data like ghosts. About people, analysts, inspectors, diplomats, who noticed patterns and then vanished into bureaucratic silence. Celine moved slowly as he spoke, walking the perimeter of the chamber. As she did, lights flared beneath the floor, data rising in translucent columns, responding to keywords, cross-referencing his words with her archives in real time. You are describing the veiled compact, she said eventually. Jace froze. You know about it. I know fragments, she replied. Enough to be concerned. Not enough to act openly without destabilizing my court. He exhaled, a humorless laugh slipping out. That makes two of us. The data around them shifted, images forming, trade routes twisting into unnatural loops, symbols flashing briefly before dissolving. Celine gestured, expanding one of them. They hide within cooperation, she said, using treaties as camouflage. A clever strategy. I almost admire it. Almost, Jace said. That's usually the point right before you dismantle something. She glanced at him. You assume correctly. A faint vibration ran through the chamber, barely perceptible but wrong. Jace felt it in his bones, the way training made him notice things he would rather ignore. You're being watched, he said quietly. Celine smiled thinly. Of course. The question is, by whom? The room responded to her tone, lights dimming, data retracting. Somewhere beyond the walls, the palace shifted again, this time not smoothly, but with the faint hesitation of resistance. Your honesty places you in danger, Celine said. My ministers will not all agree with my interest in you. I get that a lot, Jace said. I have one of those faces. She snorted softly before catching herself. You joke when afraid. I joke when alive, he corrected. Fear's just a bonus feature. The vibration returned, stronger now. A section of the far wall shimmered, briefly revealing a maintenance corridor that absolutely should not have been active during a diplomatic gala. Celine's ears tilted back. We are out of time for introductions? I was afraid you'd say that, Jace said. I was hoping for at least tea first. The lights flared as security systems activated. Some loyal, some not. Jace recognized the pattern immediately. This wasn't a direct attack. It was an extraction attempt, subtle, deniable. They want you removed, Celine said. Quietly. Flattering, Jace replied. I always knew I'd be popular. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. If you leave now, you may survive. If you stay, you align yourself with me. Jace looked at her, at the palace remembering everything beneath their feet, at the city glowing far below. He thought of vanished colleagues, of patterns unfinished. "Guess I'm staying," he said. "I hate unresolved mysteries." Celine studied him for a heartbeat longer, then nodded. "Very well." The floor shifted beneath them, panels sliding aside as a hidden passage opened. As they descended, the chamber sealed behind them, cutting off the listening nodes. For the first time since arriving, Jace felt something unexpected. Relief, followed immediately by the realization that choosing the Queen's side meant he had just made the most dangerous decision of his career, and, inexplicably, the most honest one. The passage carried them downward in a smooth spiral, the walls close enough that Jace could reach out and brush his fingers along surfaces that felt warm, almost alive. Thin bands of light rippled ahead of Celine's steps, retreating as if the corridor itself were reluctant to reveal where it led. Somewhere above them, faint vibrations echoed, doors sealing, protocols rewriting themselves in quiet disagreement. "Well," Jace said, breaking the silence, "this is already better than being politely arrested in front of several hundred dignitaries." Celine glanced back at him. "You have a remarkably optimistic definition of better." "I try to stay positive," he said. "Keeps the panic manageable." The spiral opened into a long horizontal tunnel where the gravity shifted sideways, nudging them gently forward. Jace adjusted without comment. He'd trained in worse. Celine moved as if the altered physics were a mild inconvenience, her long ears angled back now, alert but controlled. "My counsel will notice your absence," she said. "Some will assume I am interrogating you. Others will assume I am protecting you." "And the rest?" Jace asked. "They will assume both," she replied, "and act accordingly." "That sounds complicated." "Politics usually is," Celine said. "Assassination attempts tend to simplify matters." As if on cue, the corridor lights flickered. Jace stopped walking. "That was not subtle." "No," Celine agreed. "Which means it is not meant for us." The air ahead shimmered, resolving into the faint outline of a drone slipping partially out of phase with local spacetime. Its surface refracted light, edges blurring as it tried very hard not to exist in the same dimension as its targets. Jace sighed. "I really hate subtle technology." Celine raised one hand. The palace responded instantly. Gravity twisted, space folding just enough that the drone's phase alignment failed. It snapped fully into visibility with an offended whine before slamming harmlessly into the wall. Jace stared. "I spent years learning evasive maneuvers." She lowered her hand. "I spent decades convincing my palace to like me." They resumed walking. Behind them, the corridor sealed itself, absorbing the disabled drone like an immune system disposing of an infection. "You see," Celine said lightly, "not all problems require violence." "Remind me to bring a building next time," Jace said. The tunnel opened into a chamber layered with overlapping holograms, each one showing a different part of the palace, the city, and the surrounding orbital space. Figures moved within some of them. Guards, ministers, ships adjusting position. Celine stepped to the center, and the displays shifted to accommodate her perspective. "This is where I make enemies nervous," she said. Jace leaned closer, recognizing patterns that matched what he had seen in fragmented intelligence reports. "Your court is divided." "Every court is," Celine replied. "Mine is simply more honest about it." A cluster of indicators flared red. Celine's ears twitched sharply. "There," she said, "an attempt to reroute internal security. Someone wants control without appearing to take it." "Let me guess," Jace said. "The Veiled Compact." "Or those who wish to join it," Celine said. "Ambition is contagious." Another vibration rippled through the chamber. This one was closer, more aggressive. The palace lights dimmed as if bracing itself. Jace rolled his shoulders. "So what's the plan? Other than trusting me, which I assume was not originally on today's schedule." Celine regarded him thoughtfully. "You are unpredictable," she said. "You do not belong to any faction here." "I feel so included," he said. "And you think like an infiltrator," she continued, "which makes you useful." Jace blinked. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me tonight." A sharp tone cut through the air. One of the holograms fractured, revealing a corridor where armed figures advanced, moving with disciplined precision. They have bypassed one of my safeguards, Celine said calmly. Impressive. Annoying. Jace squinted. Those aren't palace guards. No, Celine agreed. They are wearing my authority very poorly. He smiled thinly. I hate it when people borrow power and don't return it. Celine turned to him. Stay close. I was planning on it, he said. Running alone seems unhealthy right now. The chamber shifted. Floors slid, walls rotated, creating new paths while closing others. The palace was no longer merely responding, it was choosing sides. As they moved, Celine spoke quietly. By morning, this will become public. My decision to protect you will be questioned. And, Jace asked. And I will answer, she said. But first, we survive the night. Jace nodded, adrenaline settling into familiar focus. Good, he said. I work best under unreasonable pressure. Celine's lips curved slightly as the palace surged around them, alive with intent. Then, she said, you will do very well here. By the time they reached the inner transit ring, the palace had stopped pretending everything was normal. Lights no longer dimmed politely, they sharpened, casting clean lines and revealing movement with surgical clarity. Gravity fields shifted in deliberate pulses, guiding some corridors open while sealing others with a firmness that suggested final decisions. Jace kept pace beside Celine, his breathing steady, mind cataloging threats while a part of him couldn't help appreciating how efficient her home was when annoyed. I take it, he said, stepping over a seam that closed behind them. This isn't how your galas usually end. Celine allowed herself a brief, dry smile. Usually there is dessert. I knew something felt off. They entered a circular chamber where the floor curved upward at the edges, forming a shallow bowl. At its center hovered a dense cluster of light, compressed data, raw and volatile. Jace recognized the tech immediately. A live intelligence core, he said. That's bold. That is my private archive, Celine replied. Isolated, redundant, and currently very upset. As if in agreement, the core flared brighter, streams of information spiraling outward before being pulled back in. The palace hummed, a low, irritated sound. Jay stepped closer, eyes tracking the data flows. Someone's trying to access this remotely. Yes, Celine said, and failing. Badly, he added, which means they'll escalate. Right on cue, the chamber trembled. A section of the wall distorted, resolving into a breach as armed figures phased through, weapons raised. Their movements were disciplined, efficient, and entirely humorless. Jace sighed. You ever notice how people who want to overthrow governments never knock? Celine raised one hand. The gravity in the chamber shifted sharply downward. Two intruders slammed into the floor, pinned instantly. The others adapted fast, recalibrating boots, anchoring themselves mid-stride. Impressive, annoying. Jace moved without thinking, grabbing a loose grav node from the floor and hurling it. The device activated mid-air, warping space just enough to send one attacker tumbling sideways into a wall that hadn't been there a second earlier. Nice throw, Celine said. I play catch, he replied, with very unforgiving people. More intruders poured in, coordinated, relentless. The veiled compact, or something wearing its tactics. Celine's ears angled back, her focus narrowing. The palace responded to her will, but even it had limits when subverted from within. They want the archive, Jace said. Proof, leverage, names. And they will not have it, Celine said evenly. She stepped to the core, placing her hand against the light. The data surged, then stabilized, syncing to her neural interface. Symbols flashed across the chamber, locking pathways, rewriting access hierarchies in real time. Jace felt it then. The shift. The palace wasn't just defending, it was learning. One attacker broke through, weapon aimed directly at Celine. Jace didn't hesitate. He tackled the figure, momentum carrying them both into a gravity pocket that flipped orientation violently. They slammed down hard, breath knocked loose. The attacker struggled. Jace grinned despite the pain. You know, he said, this would be a lot easier if you'd just explain your villain monologue. The response was a sharp elbow to the ribs. Fair. Celine's voice cut through the chaos, calm and absolute. Enough. The palace obeyed, Gravity snapped back to normal. Floors hardened. Walls closed in precise, unforgiving angles. The remaining intruders were immobilized, suspended inches above the ground, weapons locked, systems fried. Silence fell, broken only by the fading hum of overworked technology. Jace pushed himself up, wincing. "I assume that means we won?" "For now," Celine said. She turned from the core, her expression composed but tight. "They exposed themselves too soon." "Ambitious people do that," Jace said. "Get impatient." She studied him for a moment. "You intervened without being asked." "Occupational hazard," he said. "Also, I'm starting to take this personally." Her lips curved, just slightly. "So am I." The archive dimmed, settling. Celine gestured, and a projection formed between them. Names, routes, symbols. The full shape of the conspiracy laid bare at last. Jace stared. "This goes deeper than I thought." "It always does," Celine said. "But now we can end it." He met her gaze, exhaustion mixing with resolve. "You realize this means open confrontation." "Yes," she said, "and trust." Jace snorted softly. "That's the scary part." Celine inclined her head. "For both of us." Around them the palace stabilized, systems aligning under a new certainty. The night was not over, but the shape of the fight had changed. And for the first time since stepping into the gala, Jace felt something close to confidence, closely followed, as always, by dread. Morning arrived without ceremony, creeping into the palace through translucent walls that adjusted themselves to the rising light of the city below. The gala felt like a lifetime ago. The palace was quieter now, not asleep, but attentive in a calmer way, as if satisfied with the choices it had made during the night. Jace stood near one of the high windows, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, staring at a city that no longer felt entirely foreign. Traffic flowed in disciplined arcs, orbital platforms held steady, and for the first time since arriving, nothing appeared to be trying to kill him. This was new. He didn't trust it. Behind him, Celine entered without sound. She moved differently now, less guarded, the weight of decision no longer pressing so visibly against her posture. Her long ears were relaxed, angled slightly outward, a detail Jace had learned to read as relief. "The council is assembled," she said. "The evidence has been presented." "And," Jace asked, not turning. "And several influential ministers will be resigning," Celine replied. "Some voluntarily, some persuasively." Jace finally faced her. "I'm guessing the Veiled Compact won't be sending thank you notes." "No," she said, "but their network here is broken. Their routes exposed. Their leverage gone." He nodded slowly. "My people are going to want copies of everything." "They will have them," Celine said. "Nothing edited, nothing hidden." Jace raised an eyebrow. "You realize how rare that sentence is in my line of work." "I am aware," she said. "That is why it matters." They walked together toward the central chamber, where the palace had reshaped itself into a formal assembly hall. The architecture was brighter now, lines clean and honest, no longer hiding passageways or listening nodes. Court officials stood in small clusters, whispering, watching Celine closely, and Jace with open curiosity. Celine took her place at the center. Jace remained at her side, very aware that his presence was a statement whether he wanted it to be or not. "The events of last night," Celine said, her voice carrying without amplification, "were not an attack by an outside enemy alone. They were enabled by ambition within our own systems." Murmurs rippled through the hall. She continued calmly, dismantling the conspiracy piece by piece. Names appearing in light above her, roots unraveling, false treaties exposed. There was no anger in her voice, only precision. Jace watched, impressed despite himself. Back home, this would have involved months of political theater. Here it took minutes in an alien palace that disliked being lied to. When it was over, Celine turned slightly, gesturing toward him. "This human," she said, "came here under false pretenses. He could have fled when exposed. Instead, he chose cooperation." Jace resisted the urge to wave. "He will leave freely," Celine added, "with our knowledge and our trust." That earned more reaction than the arrest had. Later, much later, Jace stood at the departure platform, a compact shuttle waiting with its systems already synced to his biometrics. Celine joined him there. The palace quiet again. its crisis concluded. You could stay, she said, not as an offer of power, but of possibility. Jace smiled faintly. Tempting, but my talent for causing trouble is international. Best not concentrated in one place. She regarded him for a long moment. You arrived expecting enemies, she said. You leave differently. He considered that. I used to think trust was a liability, he said. Something that got people killed. And now, she asked. Now I think it's a risk, he said. But so is everything worth doing. Celine's ears tilted forward slightly, a gesture he recognized now as approval. If you return, she said, come openly. He grinned. Then I'd miss all the fun. She smiled back, genuine this time. Next time, choose a better alias. No promises, he said. The shuttle doors closed. As it lifted away, Jace watched the palace recede, not as a fortress or a threat, but as something strangely familiar. For the first time in years, his mission hadn't ended with silence and erasure. It ended with understanding. The galaxy, he realized, was still dangerous, still full of lies, but it was also capable of honesty, if you were brave enough to risk it.